Hello, my name is James Taylor.
He is definitely James Taylor in the flesh, and it's me, Maria Franzoni.
And you're listening to the SpeakersU Podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Maria Franzoni, what's been going on in your world this week?
Oh, it's been all about getting booked this week. I ran a group session. I don't often do group sessions. I like to work one-to-one. But there's a lot of speakers who can't afford my fees these days. Now I'm a best-selling author, you know?
Of course.
Oh dear.
Of course. I'm having to pay you money just for you to come on this podcast now. That's how in demand you are as a person.
Yes, we'd have to talk about that because those rates aren't quite high enough, James. But anyway, so I ran a group course on getting booked, and it was fantastic. I love, as you know, I like to make things really practical and action and activity oriented. And I think a few people sort of came away thinking, wow, this is actually a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. And it is easy. You know it's easy, nice. Right? So that's been fun. I love doing that. I love helping people make money. I think that's my thing.
Yeah.
What about you?
That's
what have
good.
You been? Where have you been?
Actually, I just did a keynote, and I think it's kind of useful that you try things out all the time, and there's always one thing in your keynote which is pushing you a little bit. So for some of us as speakers, maybe it's a new content thing we want to try and do, or it's a new way of presenting an idea, or a new something with physicality, communication skills you want to try. So I did one just the other day, and I thought I'm going to try this. I haven't done it. It was a little bit high risk, and I was speaking on AI, human plus machine collaboration, and I said to the audience, what we're going to do is over this next few hours together, me and you as the audience, 1,000 people in the audience, and one of my AI tools, we are going to create the theme tune for this conference. So what we had, it was really fun. So I said to the audience at the start, I used a thing called Mentimeter. We created a word cloud. Like, who's going to, what kind of style of music do we want to do? And I said, like, country music, pop. I said, okay, it's going to be country rock. Okay, who's going to be our singer for this theme tune? And they said, they mentioned all these different names, and like Taylor Swift came up number one. The event was in the US. So I said, okay, so we're going to have Taylor Swift, or a version of Taylor Swift, sing this song. Now what I need some random words that relate to your industry and this event. And so they had like agile and flow and like bizarre technical terms that you wouldn't think about. And even individuals' names, people that are really well known in the community of this particular community. And then, when I was taking one of the breaks, while they were doing an activity, I used an AI tool to basically create the theme tune, the song for the event. And then I played it live on stage at the end of the keynote, and they went crazy for it. Absolutely crazy, because they could see firsthand both the creativity of these tools, but also how some of the AI, the technical side works. And what was nice about it is it was like their theme tune. And even mentioned someone who was in the audience was actually in the front row. So people said, hey, that's me. So they could see themselves being reflected in it. And then the marketing team came up to me afterwards saying, can we use this theme tune for the whole thing? So it was just going to it could have gone horribly, horribly wrong. But thankfully it didn't. It all worked perfectly. And it was just a lot of fun and a lot of audience engagement with it. And the number of comments afterwards, and there was a drinks reception afterwards, people coming up to me saying, that just kind of opened my mind up to making these things feel less scary. That was fun.
My goodness. You might have to share in the tip later what that actually was that you used, because we're all going to want to do that now. That's a huge risk to take. Well done that it paid off. You must have been slightly nervous.
I was very nervous, and I had like backups on backups, and like you do any of these things live, you think, okay, what if it goes wrong? But thankfully it didn't, so everyone was very happy. So what are we talking about this week on this episode of the SpeakersU Podcast?
Very good question. Let me think about it. Why don't we talk about how to stay relevant as a speaker? Because it's such an important, so important relevance that it's the first element in the Bookability Formula.
What's the Bookability Formula, Maria?
You not know, James? Where have you been? Where have you been hiding? So the Bookability Formula is the formula that tells you basically what the 1% most booked speakers do that you can too. Oh my God, I'm a poet and I didn't even know it. So it's my analysis of the most booked speakers when I had a speaker bureau to see what it was that made them bookable, and the various elements are in that formula. And the most important one, and that's why it's the first, is relevant to a paying market. But the struggle is, how do you stay relevant to a paying market, which is what we're going to talk about today. How do you stay relevant,
we're going to get
James?
into the chapter of that book, that relevance chapter, which I actually have read. I read on a plane just the other day and loved it. And I think it's an interesting topic, relevance. And I would say, obviously, I speak on a perennial topic that is linked to a trendy topic. So I speak on creativity, innovation, and also AI. So like one is like the perennial and the other one is like just, it's all changing all the time. And there was a video I saw the other day that really kind of made me think about this idea of relevance for us as speakers. So it was from Eric Schmidt, who was the former chairman of Google. And he was talking about strategy. This was really a strategic, a keynote he was giving about strategy. And he said, as a leader or as a strategist, you need to think very hard about what the world will look like in 5 years' time. How will people be buying? How will they be consuming? How will they be living? How will they be working? How will they be attending events? What will they be wanting at that point? And then you need to think, based upon where I am today, what capabilities, skills, mindsets, products, services do I need to create? Positioning do I need to create so I'm in the perfect position as I go towards this new future? And he said, that's it. That's what strategy is. When you basically break it down, get rid of 5-year plans, just think about, what is it going to look like in 5 years' time? What is my industry going to look like in 5 years' time? And how do I need to move my speaking or my branding or my product, my service, my keynotes, so it's ready for that time? It's not going to be perfect, but you're going to try and get it. So that's kind of how I tend to think about relevance. I'm kind of thinking I have to be relevant today for my audience, but I actually have to be constantly a few years ahead of them, and thinking about how things are going to change. How is the demographics of our audience going to change? How is the nature, the festivalization of events going to change as well? So I thought is that maybe a good place to start, like just kind of thinking about the future, where you're going, because it must be really hard if you're a speaker on one of these kind of perennial topics, how you adjust to make relevant for today and the future.
James, you just summed it all up. We don't need to say any more. We can stop there. That's it. That is the crux of it. The whole point is you need to know what are the skills, that are going to be needed, because you can't predict what the problems are going to be. But you can predict what's going to be needed. So, and you don't necessarily have to do it yourself. You can go to people who are doing this already. So LinkedIn Learning does a regular report about what the future skills are going to be. In fact, there's one for 2025. Download it. It will give you so much, because that's actually a survey of people on LinkedIn. And who's on LinkedIn? It's business leaders, business people who are your target. And the other place that I would look is the World Economic Forum, that will tell you what the next skills are. So yeah, you completely and utterly summarized it. If you were to summarize over big picture overview, that's what it's all about. And so you've got a foot in the present day and a foot in the future. And sometimes people struggle when you say to them, for today to be relevant, and you say to someone, you need to be solving a problem that your client is having now. And people struggle with, well, I don't understanding the problem. So sometimes just by changing the language and saying, well, what's wrong? What's going wrong for your clients now? That's often easier to answer than what the problem is. And that's a starting point and a starting discussion. But you're right. You're right. You've got to be really close to your clients to understand what's happening for them today, what's going on in the future, what are they going to be needing, so that you can be relevant. Spot on. Yeah. Well done.
I think another way of doing this is how I tend to do it. And if it's on the technical nature of, let's say, AI as an example, there's things like the Gartner reports, which are very good, which go into specific sub-technologies, whether that is quantum computing. I think that's going to be a huge topic for someone, not me, but for someone to be the expert in quantum and talking about that. Or now we're seeing a lot of the new version of the smart glasses coming out from companies like Meta. What that does, that augmented reality type of experience, that's going to change retail, change loads of areas. So you can look at it from that perspective. The other thing I often do is I basically, the things that I'm tending to be reading are either on the way out, on the periphery of an area, the geeky, total geek stuff way out, and also the boardroom minutes of a meeting. So this is like the board, their job is to be strategic, thinking 5 years ahead anyway. If you just run any of those through a AI analyzer, it'll tell you the keywords are kind of coming out a lot for that organization. And what I tend to find is that thing that board is speaking about today will only really get filtered down to middle management in about 2 years' time, because it just takes so long in these big organizations to move. Like they were talking about, let's say, diversity, equity, and inclusion at a board level, like 6 years ago, and then gradually it gets filtered down into initiatives, topics for events, themes for events as well. So I think if you can stay with that board level and also go a little bit out in the wacky areas, podcasts and Reddit is good for that as well, then you're kind of triangulating as well.
That's it. I'm not surprised you go out on the wacky and probably a little bit on the nerdy, because you love all that kind of stuff. You love all the tech. I love a gadget and a technology and software and an app. I know. I'm resisting the glasses at the moment because somebody bought them recently, the Meta glasses, and said, not quite yet. They're not quite ready yet. But oh my goodness, I can't wait. I cannot wait until they are ready. So, but you know me, I love a gadget.
Actually, on that, let's freak the audience out, listeners out a little bit. So two things coming together just now. I just saw the other day Massive Attack, the band, who I'm a big fan of, great British band from Bristol in the UK. They did a show, I think it was in Berlin, where they did this show, and on the big screens behind them, it was doing live facial recognition of the audience members right there. So it was coming up with their face, who they were. Actually, it didn't say their name, but it told them like their job titles and things, and it was happening live. If you go online, you can see it as well. Ooh. So that same technology, and obviously they were doing it from thinking about saying this is a dangerous technology and we need to be thinking about this as a way. So there was an activist side of what they were doing. But if you think about those glasses now, I just spoke at an optical conference in Florida, and the other speaker was someone from one of those companies that makes those Meta glasses, the Ray-Bans. And he was talking about where it's going to start to impact on other industries and areas. So it means that engineer that's walking around a factory or a facility, they get live information about how different systems are performing. It means that when you go in and buy your next Tesla or whatever you're probably at Rolls Royce by now, Maria. Let's say you're going to your next Rolls Royce garage.
Listen, I love my Tesla. Let's not talk about Elon. Tesla's lovely. The car is fab, but Elon. That's another subject.
Next time you go and buy your next Tesla, for example, that person that's working in that store has these glasses on. It has live facial recognition. It's connected to their corporate CRM. It's immediately telling us, oh, this is Maria Franzoni. She has a 2.5-year-old Model X or Model 3 or whatever. Is coming up for renewal. Her credit rating is this. She likes this. She likes the dogs. Whatever the thing is. And it's just going to have a profound impact upon us. And I think you could look at a technology like that and go out, and even if your topic is, let's say, emotional intelligence, you can link a soft topic like that to a hard technology or a hard topic. And I think that blended stuff is actually where it creates a differentiation for yourself in the market if you can blend the soft and the hard.
I love that. What I'm waiting for those glasses for, I know we've gone slightly off piste here. When I meet people, I just go blank. Sometimes I see you and I think, who is he? And we know each other really, really, really well. The name just goes, you go blank. The name just goes from me. And it's really embarrassing. And I think it could be an age thing. It could be a hormonal thing. I don't know. It could be that my brain has just got too much in it and too many names. And so they just go. But, when I was doing my book signing, people coming up to me, and these are people who I've worked with and I know and I dearly love. And I'm thinking, remind me your name, because it just goes. So those glasses would have saved me so much embarrassment. Yeah. I sometimes call my husband or darling, because I forget his name. It's terrible. It's really bad. I never forget my dog's name. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, so let's talk about relevance. Let's get back to me. Let's stay relevant.
No, it's fine.
Let's stay relevant. Something I want to focus on, and everything you said, I completely agree with. But I think one of the things that speakers miss sometimes is the actual industry that we're in. Because as speakers, the industry that we're in is actually the industry of business meetings or professional meetings and events. And that's what you need to be close to and be close to the players in that space. And they can tell you an awful lot about what it is that they're looking for. So recently, MPI, which is the biggest association for meeting professionals. Meeting professionals are event organisers, conference organisers, etc. I think they've got over 70,000 members. They recently did a call out for speakers for one of their big conferences. And I had a look at it because when in reading it, it's telling you exactly what they are looking for in the future in terms of speakers, because it's what they're looking for their events too. And they were quite open about the type of people that they wanted some interaction, somewhat some engagement, that they want an experience, that they want not just the knowledge, but also that there is an experience around it. That hasn't changed. But there are also some other key points in there. I'll have to find it so I can share the details, because my memory's not so good. Now, if I had the glasses, it would have given me gone straight to the page and given me all the details, right? That's why I need those glasses, because I need help with my memory.
Yeah,
Sorry.
because those people are often those MPI, those meeting planners. I actually don't like calling themselves meeting planners, meeting professionals, not meeting planners,
Yes.
because they get a bit upset when you call meeting planners. So these meeting professionals, often the client is coming to them and just saying, create. They don't maybe know the theme of the event, but create me something around this, and so they subcontract a lot of these decisions around the creative tone of an event to these people as well. So they're always like right at the edge, often thinking about like what are the changes. I just spoke to one the other day, and we were talking about wristbands and the new generation of wristbands for when you go to an event. So what they do now is, especially these larger events, it's also it has an RFID tracker inside of it. So it's tracking, it recognizes which of the breakout rooms and the main sessions you've been attending. So it's able to see like which of those speakers wasn't really engaging for the audience. When were they kind of leaving? What were, let's say next year when they do that event, they actually need to have larger rooms for this particular area here, where there's people walking around less in that particular area there. So I think we kind of go back to this idea of relevance. You kind of go out there and you kind of look at all of those signals that are kind of going on there. What is my industry going to look like? You used to the meetings and conference industry, what that's going to look like in 5 years' time. And then you work back. And there is also, I think, a danger sometimes where you try to jump too quickly into that future and your audience is not quite ready for it. I heard a speaker yesterday talking about something about animal personhood. So this is the idea that animals should have the same rights as individuals, as people. Now, you and I, we're big animal lovers, so maybe we agree with that. But that's not where the 75% of the population are in many countries. So he's going to have to figure out how he goes into that topic, how he warms up an audience to this idea as well. And it might be because of the changing age of the workforce, his time will not really come until 5 years down the road. So how do we bridge that into where he wants to go?
Yeah, that's so true. There's many speakers that I've worked with who are way ahead of their time, and the audiences haven't been ready, and they've been right. And sometimes I've done it as a bureau person where I've seen a topic in the future and I've said to a speaker, I think this is the direction you want to go in, and they've not seen it themselves, and then they've come back and said, oh my goodness, you were right. So actually, one place to look about that in terms of the markets that are ahead, I don't know if you're still seeing this, but often, not in all things, but often in terms of topics and what's going on, often the US is ahead. We're behind as an industry compared to the US, certainly bureaus and agents and not so much event organizers, I wouldn't say, but certainly in how we work. I know, because I know from the bureau side for sure, behind in terms of the US and always copying them. they're often leading in terms of what the next topics are going to be, and it's quite useful. And there are other markets as well that are often pushing those boundaries, depending on what sector they're in and what area. And it's worth looking globally, especially if you're based in Europe or in the UK, to see what's going on. It's definitely worth, when you go to an event as well, sitting in other people's sessions and listening to what they're talking about. You can learn so much from other speakers.
Yeah, yeah. And here's a little tip for people if they've got maybe 4 or 5 ideas, signature keynotes that they're thinking of, maybe they're repositioning in some way. I was just talking to a book designer yesterday, and he was saying that a lot of these book fairs, like Frankfurt book fairs, when you go there, they have all the publishers have all their books out, their future upcoming books, but there's just a cover. There's nothing inside. They're all blank inside. They're selling it on the cover, what the cover looks like and the title. The book hasn't even been written. They will only commission the author to write the book once they've received X thousands of orders for that particular book. So you could do the same as a speaker. You can essentially, and this isn't new. I mean, they used to do this in the 1930s in newspapers where you would see an ad, do you want the book on fly fishing or do you want the book on something else? Send $1 check and to which one you want. And they hadn't even written the book. It was only once they received the money for the book, they would actually write it, and then they would return the other checks for the ones that they didn't write. So you can do the same thing as a speaker. You could think, okay, I've got these 4 ideas. I'm going to go to the market with these 4 concepts, essentially. Now, you have to do maybe a video for them. You have to do a bunch of other stuff for them and can sculpt out what it's going to be. You don't have to have written it yet. You can basically go out to the market, get a feel from the market, like what's resonating here. And then you go, actually, this one here, I'm getting bureaus are interested in this, clients are interested in this. It's getting some pickup. That's the one that I'll go and really properly research and write.
I'm smiling at you because this is something that I say to speakers all the time. Experiment, test the market, sell it before you create it, right? So the program I ran recently, I ran a group course on getting booked. I actually tested out, would you like me to do something like this? I tested it out in June. I got a load of responses. I kept a note of those responses. Then when I was ready, I went back to those individuals. You showed an interest. So I had filled it before I'd even created it. So and too many, I think this is a big problem with speakers and perfectionists as well, and we all have a little bit of that because we want to show up as well, at our best, is that you'll work on something and work on it without actually first testing the market, or you'll spend too much time working on it without actually having customers. And you need to have the customers, you need to have the money coming in. I often reference Dragon's Den, which if someone's listening in from another country, there'll be Shark Tank in the US and there's various others. I often reference that as a fantastic example of relevance, where when the investors, the dragons are sitting there, they're investors, and the entrepreneur is pitching their idea for their product or service, the first thing that dragon is asking before they're interested is, what's the market reaction? What are your orders? What are your sales? How much money have you made already? Because that's when the market's buying into it, then it's relevant, and it's not relevant until the market buying into it. So have I gone off piece there? But
no,
so sell it before you create it.
Yeah. And I think, going back to the Dragon's Den idea, this is a super competitive market. You are normally being considered against 2 other great speakers sometimes. And so your job is to create differentiation between you and them. And often the way that I try and do that is to show that I am more relevant for their audience than maybe these other speakers. That could be because you've spoken for that industry before. So you give an example. Hey, you're in the insurance industry. I just spoke for this other insurance industry company the other day, and this is their take on it. This is what I did for them. Or to show relevance of topic, really, this, you'd be looking at these other speakers, but here's the reason why I'm more relevant, because I have the top podcast where I interview all the leaders in this topic, for example, or I've just written the book, which is the book on this topic for your industry. I mean, that's a killer line. If you can say that to a client, that's amazing. So there's all different gradations of relevance as well.
Absolutely. And you talked about it earlier about, you said perennial topics. I call them evergreen topics. So it's a very, very similar language in that in those topics, there's even more competition, of course. And so when you were saying to mix the soft and the hard skills and to mix those messages to stand out, there's the relevance piece, but then you've got to stand out as well so that people notice you in that competition. And you also need to be visible. There's lots of layers on top of that, but the starting point certainly is the relevance.
Yeah, like I think about innovation as an example, topic I speak on, and I think about someone like Nick Webb, who's a innovation speaker for the healthcare industry, and so his clients are just pharmaceutical companies, healthcare companies, health insurance companies. So he is super relevant for them because his case studies, if I was going in against him for a pharma client or a healthcare client, he would probably win, because I know that his case studies and his examples and his stories are going to be more relevant for that audience. So I'm going to have to work really hard to try and beat someone like him to get chosen as that keynote speaker.
That's interesting, because with my bureau hat on, if I was pitching you against someone like him, and because they know him and they trust him and he knows the industry, you're right. But say I was representing you exclusively, my argument would be, right, you should be looking outside of your industry. You should be looking outside of what you know to get ideas. So that's how I would be selling you, James, into that one.
Yeah.
And how you would make yourself relevant.
I think it depends on who the conversation with the client is. I think if you're speaking to the C-suite, they are often willing to go outside of their industry because they've been in the industry so long. They know what's going on there, what their competitors are doing. Where it's more challenging is if you're dealing with someone that's more junior in an organization or a meeting professional that's been assigned to this particular event. They don't really know so much of the industry. And for them, it's all about risk mitigation. Like, how do I ensure I don't get fired from this company offered to this event next year? So if they can be able to point, like, no one ever got fired for buying IBM. It's that type of thing. No one ever got fired for bringing in usually a speaker who speaks on the topic of the theme of the event and has knowledge of the industry and is a great speaker. It's, there might have been a better speaker. There would have been a better speaker perhaps that would take the audience on a different journey or give them examples outside of their industry. But if you're going to argue for relevance, then, maybe that middle tier person that's working in the organization, they're going to go for the person that's got the relevance for that particular industry.
And you've touched on something so important in that not only does your topic need to be relevant to the paying market, but the way you present it has to be relevant to who you're targeting. If you're targeting the C-suite and that's who you're talking to, it's going to be very different than talking to that, as you said, junior event organizer potentially. Because as you said, the junior event organizer, what they're interested in is, can you prove to me that you're a safe pair of hands by having good testimonials, by having good video, by being very professional? The C-suite is, can you prove to me that you're relevant because you know and understand what we're going through, what the problem is that we're dealing with, and that you're going to give us an outcome that's going to move us towards where we're trying to get to. And then you've got bureaus as well who are like, their need is different. Can you show you're relevant to me if you show me that you're trustworthy, that we can work together in partnership, that you're going to help me help you make money, right? So it's a very the relevance is switching and changing, and actually you've got to please all of those parties really in how you show up and how you position yourself.
So I know we're going to talk in a future episode, we're going to talk about discovery calls or those calls with clients before they decide who they're going to book. I think, one of the things in there, which I know that you speak about a lot, I know you speak about in the book as well, is the way I always do those calls is if it's a 30-minute call, the first 20 minutes of that is me just asking them questions. I'm not selling myself at this point. I'm just listening, and I'm listening for certain things that I know when I come to my 10 minutes to pitch, or give like why I'd be a great speaker for their event. I'm using their phraseology, their wording, the things that they're frightened of, the things that they're excited about. I'm weaving all of that straight back in there. And that's a way you can become relevant, but in a slightly more improvisational way. It doesn't mean that you're going to be going way off your topic, but it just means it's a bit aligned to kind of what's in their head.
Oh, do you know what? The biggest skill you need to develop, and I've got to work on this more myself, I know, as a speaker and in business and whatever you do, is listening. Shut up and listen.
Yep, yep, yep. And AI can help you with this. I was going to say, because one of my clients, they actually have an AI that runs along every single sales conversation their sales team have. And AI then comes back and says, this is how you could have made that call better. And one of the biggest recommendations it gives to those sales agents is, stop talking, ask more questions, listen, follow up, ask follow-up questions on the things. That's like one of the most common things. And you tend to see, like, obviously very skilled salespeople, they know this and they're very comfortable in doing this. But it's yeah. Sometimes. Okay, we're talking about talking. We've been talking for a little while.
We
should probably start to finish up here. But before we do that, let's talk about our tools or tips of the week. Maria, what's yours?
Well, I'm always trying to make the tip related to the topic that we're talking about. So when it comes to relevance, you shared some really great tips about listening and asking questions. There's 2 questions I think you should ask at the beginning when you first start speaking to your client. And one of those questions you should ask after you've delivered if they do book you. And I think sometimes people forget to do that. They're so excited that they've got the client that's interested, they don't ask the questions. First question is, how did you find me? So that you can go deeper. If somebody says, I found you on LinkedIn, then that's just reiterating the fact I should be doing more on LinkedIn, right? I get that a lot, by the way, with new people. They find me on LinkedIn. Or it may be a referral or they've heard, etc. The other question you should ask is, why me? Why have you decided to speak to me about this topic and about this event? They're going to give you a very different answer at the beginning when they don't know you and you haven't delivered and they're a little bit nervous, but there's some value in there for your marketing that you can use. Then when you ask at the end as well, why did you pick me for this event? You're then going to get a very different and much more relaxed answer because you've been fantastic, but they're going to probably be much more open about their problems and some of their issues going forward and why they picked you. Hopefully they have been anyway in your briefing calls, but it's amazing how much more comes out once they're relaxed and they trust you because you've delivered. And obviously you're not going to quote and say it was such and such a person that said it, but this is valuable information for you to use to stay and relevant to future bookers. So that's my tip.
Yeah. I think also that why me? Or what did you see about me and my profile that made you think I would be a good choice for your event? I think when you ask that question again after you've done the event or at the event with them, the question obviously changes because you're asking why me versus the other 2 speakers that you were looking at. And this then gives you a sense of like, where am I sitting in the bit? Well, we chose you because we think you're funnier, or we chose you because, we think you had more credibility, or whatever the thing may be. So, okay, I maybe want to lean into that. That's obviously a differentiator for me. And then the other one you mentioned there was, how did you find me? So that's one of the questions I always ask on those calls, and it's changing fast just now.
AI now.
The last 2 discovery calls I had was the first person said, we found you through Copilot, Microsoft Copilot search. And the other person said, we found you through ChatGPT. And, so they're not using Google, or Google is still being used and everything, but they're using these other tools to find you. So you need to think about your SEO strategy in relation to that as well. Great. Those excellent tips. So mine is not a tip, mine is a tool for today, which is Opus, called Opus Pro. If you're watching short video clips, or if you found this podcast through watching short video clips on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, the tool that we use for that is called Opus, and it's great. Basically, we can give it this video of this podcast. It will recognize what the most viral clips are from that. It will then cut it up into the right size, and then you can schedule it to go out on those different platforms as well. So it's great if you have a podcast show, but also it's really good if you do lots of keynotes or workshops and you just want it to put in that long video and say, find me the most interesting 1 or 2 clips from that keynote that I can then share on social media, for example, or put into a show reel. So it's a great tool. It's called Opus. There is a free version, I think. You get so many credits. And we'll put a link to that as well if it's something you're interested in learning about.
I love that you love an app. Love it. Fantastic. Thank you, James.
Well, I think that's us for the week. Goodbye from me, James Taylor.
And it's goodbye from him. Bye-bye.
Do you dream of stepping on stage and being paid big? $10,000, $50,000, or even more? For just one keynote, If you're ready to stop speaking for free or low fees and build a speaking business that generates real income, listen closely. Introducing the 7-Figure Speaker Program with James Taylor. He's trained hundreds of speakers to go from small stages to commanding big fees, teaching you the full system: marketing, sales, craft, profitability. You'll get insider templates, email swipe copy, checklists, everything you need to book more gigs, raise your rates, win speaker bureau deals, and build evergreen revenue streams. If you want the strategy and tactics to build a global speaking business faster than you thought possible, this is your moment. Go to SpeakersU.com and get started today. The stage is ready for you.
If you're a speaker who wants to get more bookings, charge higher fees, and run a thriving speaking business, then you need to know Maria Franzoni. Maria has spent over 2 decades inside the world's top speaker bureaus, negotiating thousands of engagements for some of the biggest names on stage. Today, she works one-to-one with speakers, helping them build the business behind their speaking. If you'd like to be more bookable and more profitable, visit mariafranzoni.me to find out how she can help you.